Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Morrow and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please turn off your camera and microphone and/or go to the Facebook Live video feed, the link to which I'll now place in the chat room. For a better experience, please turn off your microphone and set your video to gallery view. This show thrives on participant contributions, and all participants are encouraged to actively participate in this webinar by asking questions and making comments. To do so, please either write in the chat room, raise your hand, or turn on your microphone to say hi, and I will be delighted to include your perspective in the conversation. Tonight, our featured guest is Dolora Zajick, a mezzo-soprano and founder, president, and general director of the Institute for Young Dramatic Voices, Beatrice Bensi, maestro collaboratore at Teatro alla Scala, Tony Teres, a tenor and artist at the Institute for Young Dramatic Voices, and Julia Bushkova, professor of violin at the University of North Texas. Also joining us tonight is Dr. Lino Rivera, professor of music at St. Mary's College of California. Welcome, Ms. Zajick. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Ms. Zajick, could you unmute yourself first?
Sorry about that.
Perfect.
Well, I had a relatively late start to singing. I really didn't start taking lessons until I was almost 22. And I got my first role when I was 22. And it was singing Kate in the Pirates of Penzance. And at that time, I didn't have any high notes. And my the other singer who was singing Edith didn't have any low notes. So I sang her low notes and she sang my high notes. And the director liked it so much he left it in. He thought it was so funny he left it in. And then the next year I had high notes and she had low notes, and then everything was fine. But that was my first operatic experience.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about this career. Like you said, you started later. I understand that you were first studying medicine before you got into singing. Tell us a little bit about that and how that all developed, how you got into singing, and then some of your early successes.
Well, it was kind of a cockeyed beginning, because in the beginning, what I really wanted to do was play piano. I was 7 years old, and for the first time, I heard somebody play the piano live, and it was a child playing a little Mozart piece. And I was instantly converted. And all of a sudden, that's all I wanted to do. It became the most important thing in my life. But circumstances didn't permit having lessons or being near a piano. So by the time I was able to do so, it was much too late. So I decided to become a doctor. So my heart was really in music from the beginning. And then when I discovered that I had a voice, I thought, oh, well, I have a chance to actually be part of this music world. And that's how it worked out. So I switched majors when I discovered that I had a voice.
And so you said, I believe your first success came from, you were singing in the choir of an opera, and then the director or the conductor said, actually, you need to be up front singing here in the cast. Is that right?
Well, no, it was a very gradual thing. I sang a lot of small roles, many small roles from the very beginning, with a small professional company. And in the beginning, they didn't know if I was going to have a career. I was one of those singers that they wondered, is this girl going to make it? I mean, because I started late, but things worked out and I just got better and better. And I guess when they realized that I had some potential was I was 24 and I was given the cover of Azucena. And granted, linguistically, it needed much improvement, but musically it was already there and vocally it was already there. And that's when I realized that I was a Verdi singer. I didn't know I was at that point, but that's when I realized, oh, this is what I am. So, and then from then on was just preparing those roles and pulling back because, of course, when people discover you have a voice, then the opposite happens. Everybody wants to use you and many singers are thrown on that trash heap. They use them up. They sing in a lot of provincial places. They burn out their voices. And so I took the long goal and decided to I was going to take my time and do it the right way, which I did.
And how did you make such a wise move at such a young age? It must be, I can imagine today, it must be unthinkable that you would turn down engagements like that. How did you get the strength to make that decision and have that wisdom in the first place? It really came from inside of my own, just knowing who I am. And then when I started comparing myself with other people, in my late 20s, when you can make many decisions, I always was true to what I thought was in my best interest for a long-term career. You just have to be able to step back and look at yourself objectively without losing your confidence, which is a big thing that young singers often go through. We deal with it on our program. A lot of times when kids become too aware of what they need to fix at a very young age, they lose their confidence. And you don't want them to lose their confidence, but at the same time, you want them to learn to be objective and to make wise decisions. And the more you explain things to them, the smart ones get it. The smart ones get it. They understand. The ones that aren't so smart, they go out and they ruin themselves, and there's nothing you can do about them. But that means they're not smart enough for a career. Okay.
Because you have to make many, many, many wise decisions to have a career.
Wow. Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into your work at the Institute for Young Dramatic Voice in a little bit. Let's take another look at Dolora Zajick's singing. Fantastic. So I'd like to bring in Beatrice Bensi at this time. Welcome, Miss Bensi.
Thank you. Hi, Dolora.
Hello.
Miss Bensi, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
I work at La Scala in Milan, and I am a coach. I'm a pianist for, coach for rehearsals, rehearsal pianist, and also I train singers on their roles, working on the piano. And so that's how I met Dolora the first time.
That's the next question. How was that? How did you meet her? What was that first like?
I knew her. I have known her since ages. I mean, she was already very famous when I got to know her at La Scala. She came for a Don Carlo, a new production, and the conductor was Daniele Gatti. We had Ferruccio Furlanetto as Filippo II, and Dolora was our Eboli, and I was rehearsal pianist for the production, and we got to know each other, and we worked together a little bit because she was so, like all the very professional singers, she wanted to get better with the diction, with the style. She already had everything, but she wanted more, the big singers, and that's the way they are. And so we worked together a little bit. We became friends, and I'm so honored of this friendship. That's how I got to know her.
And Miss Bensi, and can you tell us what does Miss Zajick mean when she says she's a Verdi, so a mezzo-soprano, a Verdi singer? What's that mean?
That she has a big voice, because Verdi characters are all meant for big voices. She's a dramatic mezzo-soprano. I mean, like I would say a spinto, if we can say so, because she's an Amneris, she's an Eboli, she's not a cherubino for sure. So that's the meaning of what she is saying. She's an Ulrica. So all the dramatic roles, Azucena, all the dramatic roles that Verdi wrote are perfect for her voice. She is all these characters. And when I see her, I see all these characters in her.
And so that kind of voice, is that what most sopranos, if they're young children and they want to become a singer, that's what they want to be? Is that it?
Yes, both sopranos and mezzos, they want to be like her and have this amount of voice, but it's not only the amount, it's also the timbre of the voice and the musicality that she has. She's really a musician while she's singing. So I think they can imitate her, but there's only one Zajick.
Lovely. So Ms. Zajick, back to you now. Was it smooth sailing after you won the Tchaikovsky competition in the 1980s? So you won that and in Moscow, and then you started this career. You were singing at the Metropolitan Opera all over the world. Did you instantly, like you said, you knew you were going in for a long career? Were there big bumps during that long career, or was it just easy?
Well, actually, once I sang at the Tchaikovsky competition, that's what really opened the door for me. I got the bronze medal, and I was able to take that, and the director of the opera program at Manhattan School of Music asked me if I would audition for his manager. He said he'd never done that before and probably wouldn't do it again, but he just felt this was a special situation, and said, he would set up the audition. So I did, and I auditioned for Betsy Crittenden, and she immediately took me, but not to sign a contract. I entered into what they call entering into an agreement. And what it is they want to watch you, they help you get jobs, they help you get things. And then they see what you do with it. They see if you make wise decisions, if you can listen, if you're able to, if your career can be molded, and if you make progress, you get better at what you do. So I auditioned for after auditioning for her, she said I should audition for the major training programs because I wasn't quite there yet, but I was almost ready to roll for a big career, but I just needed a place to cook for just a couple of years. So I auditioned for the Met, Chicago, no, not Chicago, the Met and Marilla. And Marilla seemed to be the place that was looking for Verdi mezzos and kind of understood my voice because Terry McEwen had recorded 3 great Verdi mezzos, Ed Bastignani, Fedora Barbieri, and Giulietta Simeonato. So he knew what a Verdi mezzo was. And I felt like I knew that I would not be given the wrong repertoire. People wouldn't be trying to push me into being a soprano because people mistake the color of the voice sometimes for a voice type. And it's really where your passaggio is, because that's what determines what your voice is. I mean, like you can take a basso cantante and you can take a lyric, you can take a lyric bass baritone, and that can have the exact same range, similar timbre, same size voice, but there's going to be one key difference is one's voice is going to turn higher than the other voice. And that's what determines what their voice is. And even though there's some overlap of repertoire, it's going to, their tessitura is going to be in a different place. And so I knew I needed to be in a place where they understood that I was a Verdi mezzo. And so I knew I was in the right place. And from then on, it was just keeping my nose to the grindstone. I didn't know at the time that they were grooming me for Azucena. They were trying me out in different things to see how I did, and they didn't tell me till afterwards. And then in my last month as an Adler Fellow, they handed me a contract for Trovatore, and that's when I signed on with my manager. And from then on, it was just one debut after another. I auditioned for La Scala, Muti for recording. I auditioned for Chicago Lyric for the first cast of Aida, second cast in Houston. I auditioned for Rostropovich to do a concert, to do Alexander Nevsky. And there was one more thing in there. Anyway, but I got all auditions except I didn't get the Carmel Bach Festival, but I wasn't complaining. And the Met came shortly after. And so from then on, it was just a matter of, because I went in at the right age, I was at the right level of development. I was able to jump into the career with the right. I dropped my ear. Does it work? We
can hear you perfectly.
Okay. So I was able to, then it was just a matter of delivering the goods, because it's one thing to get a debut. It's another to deliver the goods, because if you can grab the audience and you can do a really good job and you get asked back, that's when your career is established. A debut is not enough. You have to be asked back. And that's when your fee starts to go up, it starts to climb up. And that's when I call those the establishing years. So, and then once I had made all my successful debuts and I had gotten asked back, then I was an established artist. And then it was just a matter of just doing a good job everywhere I went. So once I got to that level, the difficulties were before that time. That's when I was still in school, finding ways to pay for school, living in an expensive place like New York. I had already had a master's degree from University of Nevada, Reno, but I needed to continue. I wasn't quite ready. I needed to continue being hooked up with music somehow. So I did their professional studies at Manhattan School of Music. And that filled the gap until I went to the Tchaikovsky competition, and that's when things started rolling smoothly for me.
So it sounds like it's really thanks to that wisdom we were talking about before that you made the right decisions. You're already, because you're such a mature person, you had such a sensible overview of what was before you, where you'd come from, that you had no surprises really.
Well, I think that in the beginning, I actually said no more than I said yes. People wanted me to do all kinds of stuff, and I had to say no. In fact, in one, I remember there was this really rich donor, and he wanted me to do this. They wanted me to come do this Trovatore at the Met and do the opening performance, and I had already signed a contract with another company. And the fact that he was not going through my manager was already a no-no. And I said, I can't do that. I've already signed a contract. And he got really upset and stormed out. And I thought, well, I blew the Met, but then they ended up hiring me anyway. And they just moved the telecast to accommodate so that they would have the cast that they wanted. So it all worked out. So, a lot of people think that they have to compromise their principles in order to have a career. And that's not really true. Because both good and bad people end up at the top because of what they can do, not on stage. It's not because of what they can do behind the scenes. People might think so. And some people have paid for more publicity than other people, but they pay for that. So people often have this concept that that they have to machinate in order to have careers, and the better you are, the less you have to machinate. And it's really the lower you get down that people do all the machinations. So if you're really good at what you do and you pay attention to your craft, that is going to solve more problems than anything else. It's just being good at what you do and disciplining yourself.
Okay, let's take a look at another video. This is a mature career, Dolora Zajick. Fantastic. So, Ms. Zajick, can you tell us, in September of 2019, just a few months before the pandemic would be declared, then you had you declared that you would take your final bow at the Met in 2020. Tell us a little bit about that, making that decision, and then how life has been since then. How that is, if your work-life balance has always been so equilibrated, or if that your life has changed completely after taking your final bow.
Well, I had planned on taking that bow back then at the Met in Copacabana, and it got canceled because of COVID. And then I thought, well, that's it. Then I just won't sing anymore. But, I thought I would have liked to have done at least one farewell before I stopped singing completely. So the Liceu offered me the old Countess in Pique Dame. So I thought, oh, well, that role I could do. And, it's an old lady role, and I'll be almost 70. And anyway, so it all works. And I was all set to do it, and then the pandemic just went really crazy, and I pulled a muscle in my back. I had asthma. I mean, I've always dealt with asthma my whole life, And you know, and I got arthritis, and I don't hear as well as I used to, and I don't see as well as I used to. My reflexes are slower. And I said, you know what? That's just too much to go through to sing in Barcelona. Meanwhile, I had been offered by La Scala the same role with Georgiev conducting. And so what happened was I thought, I can't do two performances at the same time. That's crazy. That's insane, especially at my age. And so I turned it down. And then when La Scala found out that I turned it down, they said, oh, they thought, oh, now she can do this. And I said, no, I'm finished singing. So that was my real farewell. But it was nice that La Scala was the last offer. So that it was the last offer. But then I realized that I was just too old. I'll actually be 70 tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm having my 70th birthday. So, you know, I'm not a spring chicken. And I kind of like people to remember me the way I was, rather than, you know, a shadow of myself. Not that I wouldn't consider myself a shadow of myself, but it's, you just don't know if the asthma is going to kick in, and I don't have my youth behind me to resolve the issue if it does. And it was just too much. So I'm actually relieved that it's, you know, I'm not singing anymore. And I've got time to spend on a lot of things that I have not had time to spend on. I'm an amateur scientist. I study avian cognition. I'm a composer. I've had some of my things have been performed. I'm running my program, the Institute for Young Dramatic Voices, and I write. I like to write. And right now I'm putting together a book on how music came to humans from an evolutionary perspective. And these are things that when you're performing, you just don't have time to do, because you have to do nothing the day before, and then the day of you perform, and the day after you aren't good for anything. So for every day you perform, you lose 3 days. So and always traveling and things like that. So I never had time to do a lot of the other things I like to do. So painting, you know, writing, just a lot of creative type things, and as well. And so now I have time to do those things, and I'm happy doing them. And I think that my attention now in opera should be really directed towards the next generation of singers. I think that that's where I can be most useful, make the biggest difference, and that's where I should be putting my efforts, not trying to hang on to, you know, past glory. I think that I'm much more useful as a teacher.
Okay, well, let's take a look at that. And also, thank you so much for spending the day before your birthday with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So let's take a look at a singer from the Institute for Young Dramatic Voices. Wow. So Beatrice, could you tell us, Ms. Bensi, would you tell us a little bit about this Institute for Young Dramatic Voices and your work there?
Yes, it's the program that comes from an idea of Dolora Zajick, and it's absolutely amazing to speak about this, because I think it's a unique program, because it's really for young singers who are who have this gift of having a dramatic voice in their early years. I mean, it's very, the standard usually is that a young singer starts with lighter roles, lighter repertoire, and then they grow, and people think that the voice becomes dramatic as they grow up. But there are some young people who are already, who have already a potential for a dramatic voice. So this can mislead them in a way that, theaters might want them to sing dramatic roles very early. Managers, agents, they want to use them. And if they accept, it might be a short career because they can damage their voice. And so she knows what this means, and she knows how to deal with young people with a dramatic voice, leading them slowly, step by step. Maybe their career will start a little later. She knows how to have them study well and without damage. And so she put together this faculty that is really specialized on that. We work on the dramatic roles, like, as you said before, Verdi, Puccini, the Verismo, Italian Verismo. Also, they have an American Wagner project. So they work on Wagner and German music. And so I've been invited to be part of the faculty. I'm really honored. And she really knows how to work with these young people. And I think it's really interesting for the students who have dramatic voice potentials, because she knows how to deal with these kind of students.
Okay, let's take a look at another video of another student here. Fantastic. I'd like to bring in now Mr. Tony Teres. Hi, Mr. Teres.
Hi.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work here at the Institute for Young Dramatic Voices?
Well, I worked like a teacher at the school until 2016. And after that, I met Miguel Larin, and he presented me to Dolora Zajick in 2017. And she invited me to the Institute, and I accepted that suddenly because that was a very, very important opportunity to grow up in this world.
And can you tell us a bit about your hearing her talk, Ms. Zajick talk about her extraordinary life and career? Do you see yourself? Can you also imagine yourself? Can you take part in that story? Is that you too?
Yeah, well, I never imagined that. That's so far from Mallorca, no? To be in the States, to work with Dolora and this amazing team of teachers. And I heard about Dolora in relation to the Vignes competition, but I didn't really know her. But she is, for me, a lovely person, super professional, and I connected very well with her and all the staff of the program. Yeah.
Fantastic. And now your career, I understand that you're singing in Catalonia next week, that you been all over the world singing. We can hear why, like Ms. Zajick said, you know, the most talented, those who have great voices and musicality, then they're naturally, of course, they're going to be there. Tell us about the career that you would like to lead, and a little bit about where you are now, where you're going.
Well, I would like to sing in the most important theaters of the world. Yeah, that's my final goal. But I understand really well the idea of Dolora, because that's important to start step by step, because other way you can fall, and that's really difficult to give up, no, to recover of that, no. So year by year, I have in my more jobs, sorry, and this next May, I'm going to do my debut of the Duca di Mantova in Rigoletto. So piano piano, I'm building my career.
Fantastic, and we're there cheering you on. So Ms. Zajick, can you tell us a little bit about working with Mr. Teres, and tell us about that. With your institute, is this the kind of success you're looking for? And one note, you're muted.
Yes, what we do is we give them, we try to give our singers the tools that they need for every step of the way that they are going towards their career. And we have really young students that our job is to get them into the right conservatories or the right teachers. We have conservatory students, we want to get them in the right programs. We have people in programs, we want to get them connected with the right, jobs. And so we have everything from our opera discovery program for high school students to even a young professional division for singers that have already made an important debut in an important opera house. So we're with our singers until they've established their careers, because establishing their careers is just, that those first performances are just as important as just doing a debut. So we're with them through that process. So of course we're with Mr. Antoni every step of the way until that is established. And even though you can't promise somebody's going to have a career, we're fairly sure that he will have one. And we're it's just a matter of just being there when he needs us, and that's what we do, whatever that is that they need, because people need different things at different steps of their development. And that's one of the things that makes us a little different from other programs, in that most programs have a very narrow range of age or experience level, but they have that they're looking for, because of the kinds of, like they're going to be using them for smaller roles, or they're going to have them cover big ones. And so the requirements are different for each one. But they have a wide range of voice types that they take, and we're the exact opposite. So we have a narrow range for voice types, but a very wide range of levels of experience. And that's why we have 6 different programs to accommodate those different levels.
Fantastic.
And by helping them with the right steps, a lot of our singers, they end up in major houses everywhere. So it obviously works.
Congratulations. What a fantastic. It's so great to learn about this. Of course, we will show everybody at the end of the show how to stay in touch with Ms. Zajick and how to apply to the program, how to support the program, the Institute for Young Dramatic Voices. I would like to move on to our roundtables, in which we talk about what is music diplomacy? Is it tenable during a hot war against the West? So first, I would like to welcome Professor Julia Bushkova, Professor of Violin at the University of North Texas. Hi, Ms. Bushkova.
Thank you. Hello.
Ms. Bushkova, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Well, I teach at University of North Texas. I'm a violinist, and I originally come from Russia, from Moscow, but I've been an American citizen since 1998. So,
And can you tell us about this unique perspective that you grew up in a family of musicians in Russia, in Soviet Russia, and then became an American citizen? Now you have a huge violin following. I understand that your YouTube videos have more than 30,000 views each time you produce a video. Tell us about this. What is this perspective you have, and this? What do you think about when you think about the events going on right now?
well, what's going on right now is completely horrendous. You mean we win the war in Ukraine? So, it's one thing when there's Cold War going on, was going on during the years I was growing up. But then, the musicians were sort of the diplomats, or they were immune. There was a sort of diplomatic immunity to all musicians, I believe. I know, well, it was before my time, but I would say we as Russians were overjoyed when Van Cliburn won. And he was the very first Tchaikovsky competition. Of course, it's like Appian did everything, but that was fantastic. And that's because music still could be just music. And there, of course, Soviet Union sent the best musicians to the West. It's well known to be ambassadors and to prove to everybody how great the Soviet Union was. But anyway, but that's one thing when it's a Cold War. It's another thing when there's a hot war, when there's a real war going on. And whether we like it or not, all people are the same in the reaction to this. And there's always a backlash, and that's just a human condition.
Okay, so this brings us to our first roundtable, and I would like Ms. Bushkova to answer the same question. When I finish reading the question, it is, during the World Wars, much music from enemy nations were completely banned, as in the case of Wagner's music in Bolshevik Russia, which was promoted when Stalin was allied with Hitler, and then banned when Hitler invaded. Then during the Cold War, musicians and artists were dispatched as diplomats to hostile foreign nations, as when Ms. Zajick competed at the Tchaikovsky competition in 1982. After the Cold War, globalization meant that during a modern musician's career, she or he are almost certain to court elite individuals presiding over autocratic regimes, the values and objectives of which are antithetical to Western values and objectives. The idea that musicians have diplomatic immunity from criticism, such as when the New York Philharmonic performed in Pyongyang, North Korea in early 2008, seems to have ceased with the Munich Philharmonic's decision to fire its Russian conductor for not distancing himself from the Russian armed forces' invasion of Ukraine, and the Metropolitan Opera's decision to drop Russian singers from its current production casts. How has musicians' diplomatic coup record been in the past? And has the time come to admit that autocratic regimes are simply using Western culture to their own benefit? Professor Bushkova?
Well, I'm not sure exactly that I understand the essence of the very last question, using the Western music. I mean, Western music is all we have in Russia, actually. We don't have any kind of Eastern music there. So I would avoid that. But, oh, now it's my turn to lose an ear. Okay, we're still here, right? So, but the thing is I do believe there's a big difference. First of all, big difference is that not every musician will be courting the elite in autocratic regimes or semi-autocratic regimes. Let's put it this way. Putin's regime, until very lately, wasn't seen as very autocratic, not at least by Russians. But it became more and more and more so, and obviously it is. So, but not every musician would do that, just some. And those some, they would just do it for the reason that they will become richer and more prosperous because, of course, the Tsar or leader would shower them with all kinds of benefits, material benefits mostly, and of course also possibilities to perform everywhere and anytime and whatever, like. So I do actually stand with the idea that some Russian artists should not be performing right now if they're allied very closely to Mr. Putin. I do think that they have to pay the price for being basically traitors to the profession. They didn't have to do it. I know very many musicians who absolutely didn't do it, and they're great musicians, and they have great morals, and they have, great integrity. And they didn't get chums with Putin. And those who did, I think they shouldn't be singing right now, and they shouldn't be playing, and they shouldn't be conducting, but not the others. You see, this is where I feel that the line should be drawn. But unfortunately, as I said before, probably the backlash will go for everything. Like, people canceling Tchaikovsky, just amusing by Tchaikovsky, canceling Scheherazade. Like, I was talking to a conductor just a couple of days ago, and he said, I was supposed to conduct Scheherazade somewhere. It was canceled because it's Tchaikovsky. Well, that's lunacy. That's plain lunacy. Well, but since Tchaikovsky obviously didn't know about Mr. Putin and the war in Ukraine and so forth, but not applauding people who have very consciously aligned themselves with Mr. Putin and with allied with Russian army, for that matter, that is creating just atrocities right now in Ukraine. I think it's wise. I think it's fair.
What an extraordinary statement to hear that I can't imagine hearing just a few months ago. Extraordinary. Ms. Bensi, would you please tell us your point of view? I understand that also a Russian conductor, the same one from Munich, was disallowed or disinvited from La Scala.
Yes, it's Valery Gergiev, I can say exactly. He has been very connected to Putin, and it's been always very, written on newspapers. He declared many times that he agreed with the connection of Crimea to Russia, that he agreed that Ukraine is part of Russia. So it's not just today. I remember I worked with him on a Macbeth some years ago, and it was a period when he was having control on the second Mariinsky Theater in St. Petersburg. And because Putin was sending him a lot of money to build this second theater, he used to fly back and forth from St. Petersburg to Milan. He came here by plane, and then he flew back to St. Petersburg. Sometimes he arrived late at the rehearsals because he was controlling all the building of this new theater. And he declared many times that the money came from the government and from Putin, and he was very, very connected to him. So I absolutely agree that if the connection is so clear, it's better if other people perform in this moment, people who are not so connected. I absolutely agree with that.
Exactly.
Wow. Antoni, Mr. Teres, can you tell us your perspective? You are clearly, like Ms. Zajick said, destined for a great career. Are you afraid of burning bridges? Are you afraid? How does that look to you? I would imagine in a time like today, musicians will do anything to get an engagement. They've been sacrificed themselves for so long in order to just get a little bit of a career, a little bit of time on stage. What's your perspective?
Well, now we have the pandemic and also the war. So it's a really difficult time. And yeah, you're waiting for contracts, you're waiting for job to sustain your economy, your life, the life of your family. And in a few seconds, you can lose all of that. So it's so hard. And we are preparing a role for a year, maybe. And we are spending so many money in that job. But yeah, within a moment, all changes.
And what's your perspective on this now, the relations with Russia? If you were invited to go there, how does that look? Would then you say possibly, oh no, well, I can't.
No, I would prefer to work in Spain, Italy, France, also in the States, but not in Russia right now. I don't feel it. I don't have this energy. No. Right now, no.
Plus, you won't even be able to get to Russia now since now no flights are going to Russia or from Russia. So that's easy to solve.
Wow. So clearly, Mr. Teres, I can tell you are a good friend of Ms. Zajick because you have the same wisdom and willing to stand up for what you believe. Fantastic. So Ms. Zajick, to you.
Well, I have an interesting perspective because the beginning of my international level career, in a sense, began with Russia because I was in the Tchaikovsky competition. And then from that very video that you showed, that Trovatore, when the Met did its first international broadcast, and the first international broadcast from the Met that went to Russia was that Trovatore. So in a way, I kind of was in the minds of the Russians because I remembered from the Tchaikovsky competition. And even though I never sung in Russia, they saw me in the first video. So it gave me a strange kind of status there. And I didn't really go back until Russia until Anna Netrebko asked me if I would sing on her concert. So I went to sing there, and I was starting to pick up bad vibes about, not from her, but from the situation there. And I was starting to get a little paranoid. That's always a good sign to me. If I'm starting to get paranoid, it means that something's going on. So when I was they asked me if I would do a second concert, and I said no. And I was doing master classes in Bulgaria, and they had this press conference, and there were Russian journalists there, and they said, "Oh, we understand you're doing another concert with Anna Netrebko," and I said, "I am." And they said, "Yes, it's been announced everywhere," and blah blah blah. And I said, "See, that's what happens when you get old." And then everybody laughed, and but it was like, and then ironically, when I was asked to do this Peak Dom, in Barcelona, and then do it at La Scala, I turned it down. Half of it was because I was too old, and half of it was because I just felt really uncomfortable working with Mr. Gergiev. I'd had experiences with him before. And what's really, really unfortunate about that is that was the first time I felt like I had to draw a line, because even when I was doing the Tchaikovsky competition, there was a diplomatic immunity for singers. And all of a sudden, that diplomatic immunity had disappeared. And that is so unfortunate, because there were two areas that were not touched that was considered okay. When it comes to the arts, especially musicians and sports, let's keep this, let's at least have some semblance of peace and diplomacy and an attempt to have a cultural exchange. Because the truth of the matter is I love the Russian culture. I love the people. There's so much about Russia to love. And my fear is that people are going to become so big on Putin that they're going to cut out Russian culture. And I think that's a huge mistake, because if there's anything we need, it's a promotion of understanding between cultures. We need that. We need that understanding. And the more we share of these different cultures, the less likely people are to hate somebody because they don't recognize it, because they're so different from who they are. And I think that it's very sad that a lot of singers who are going to be caught in the crossfire between the big countries in this, and I think that that's a mistake. And I always feel bad for these small countries that are in the big countries. Are like these big glaciers, and then there's these little countries that are in between these border areas, the no zone areas, and they always suffer. They always suffer as these tectonic plates grind together, and it's unfortunate, that it's the little places that suffer the most. And I personally, I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in war for anything. And I think that, we have two Ukrainians in our program and a Russian. in our program. So I got this, Beatrice received this email from one of our people, and she said that her heart has just stopped because, you know, her whole family's in Kyiv. She was in Poland in a training program, but her whole family's in Kyiv. And then we have another one. We had another singer that we had just accepted, and for a long time we didn't even know where she was. She still hasn't told us where she is. She just says that she's in a safe place. That could be anywhere. That could be a bunker. And she's in and last we heard, she was in Kyiv. And then what do we do with our Russian singer? Is she going to be able to come back? Is her government going to prevent her from coming back? Is she going to feel safe coming to our country?
Devastating.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, you know, our singers are caught in this crossfire. So our job is going to be to promote as much peace and to let our singers know that it's a haven for these singers, for their talent, no matter what country they're from, that we support their art. And that's the approach that we're taking, that we're there to support them, and that they're in this together, and that this is how friendships are made, and how, you know, can combat against the war. Because the problem is when something horrible happens to your country, like it's happened in the Ukraine on more than one occasion, what happens is a resentment begins to build up, a hatred. Because, you know, if you starve people to death, you know, like Stalin did, that's going to leave some bad resentments. And then finally they're getting over it. And then all of a sudden Putin comes in and rolls over them. And then there's going to be hard feelings. And so our job is to, at least in our little organization, is to promote understanding between the cultures, and to let people know that they're welcome no matter what their country is or what their culture is. That is our position.
Fantastic. Ms. Bushkova, Professor Bushkova, do you agree? Is that what you hope?
Well, of course. The hope dies last.
Okay. And Ms. Bensi?
Absolutely. I think Dolora's words are perfect. I agree with every word.
Ms. Teres? Mr. Teres?
Yes. No worry.
Okay. So let's see how we can stay in touch with Ms. Zajick. Here is the Institute for Young Dramatic Voices. Easy enough, iydv.org. And that's where you can see it all and can reach out to them there by just clicking on contact. Ms. Zajick's website is dolorazajick.com, also easy enough. And Ms. Zajick, people can reach out to you if they have any questions or comments?
Yes.
Wonderful.
They can reach out on the website.
Wonderful. So we just, there it is. Contact Dolora Andante at dolorazajick.com. So thank you very much to Ms. Dolora Zajick. Thank you very much to Ms. Beatrice Bensi. Thank you very much to Mr. Tony Teres. Thank you very much to Professor Julie Bushkova. So let's take a look at next week. We have coming up Davide Massa. What makes a city a city? We constantly hear talk about cities like Los Angeles, New York, London, Paris, and the list goes on as dynamic national laboratories of happy innovation. It's in cities where the best and the brightest fight to implement their visions of modernity and improve life for everyone else in the process. But just as often, we hear that cities are where crowds of superficial and inauthentic people flock to run the quote-unquote rat race through metropolitan congestion, squalor, alienation, and in pandemic times, illness. So what makes a city a city? Transportation and urban development specialist Davide Massa will come on our show to help us understand the unique problems city planners face, like parking lots, which, unnoticed by most of us, wreak havoc, and what some current solutions look like. Get ready for a very special kind of tourism. A programming note to our participants in the United States. This show will once again take place at the normal show time from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific Time. As always, all upcoming shows and information about them can be found at www.simeonmoro.com. Once again, that's next Wednesday. Davide Massa, what makes a city a city? Once again, thank you very much to Dolora Zajick. Thank you to Beatrice Bensi, Tony Teres, Julia Bushkova, and Lino Rivera. Thank you to Agnieszka Rivole for her support of this show. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants, who make it all worthwhile. From Vienna, Austria, Milan, Italy, Mallorca, Spain, New London, New Hampshire, New York City, New York, Denton, Texas, and the Bay Area, California. Goodbye. See you next Wednesday.